If you're listening to this, there's a good chance you work within the real estate investing industry. There's another good chance that you would like to increase the sales of your products or services. Well, you're in the right place. United States Real Estate Investor is a platform you need to place your brand directly in front of your target audience. With our focused, growing audience of real estate investing beginners, enthusiasts, and seasoned professionals, you can continually reach our captivated viewers and listeners with ease. To learn more or to get started today, just visit UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. That's UnitedStatesRealEstateInvestor.com/advertising. Get ready to increase your brand awareness and your bottom line. Attract clients with content.
Welcome to This Month in Real Estate Investing, where we separate the noise from the news. I'm your host, James Brown, and I show people how they can make safe, secure returns through our pre-vetted passive investments. Feel free to download our ebook, The Astute Investor, the top 10 mistakes investors make and how to avoid them, or join our private investor club so you can get exclusive opportunity alerts that we don't actually advertise to the general public. Just go to acceleratemycapital.com. In this episode, we're going to be breaking down a variety of real estate investing news items, including government shutdown adds uncertainty to housing market, office to co-living conversions in Phoenix, and Dave Ramsey slams Millennials and Gen Z. Don't forget, if you're watching live on YouTube, you could share your thoughts and questions during the show. Let's start the show. All right, our guests today are Dave Foster, a repeat guest, Patrick Grimes also, and Fred Moskowitz. In that order, let's start with you, Dave, then Patrick and Fred. Just tell people, what your background is in investing, anything else relevant.
Dave Foster. I am a compulsive real estate investor, but I'm probably more well known as a qualified intermediary for 1031 tax-deferred exchanges. That's where I do my day job. And I have a gambling debt to James, which is why I'm here today.
Thank you. All right. Patrick?
My name is Patrick Grimes. I'm with a company called Passive Investing Mastery. We focus on educating and sponsoring different non-correlated alternative investment strategies for those that are a little tired of stock market and real estate. Probably like we're going to learn about some of the shortcomings of real estate in this event here today. And I was here one other time. Glad to be back. And I know Dave Foster was on my platform a couple months ago, so I'll be getting to learn about Fred.
Awesome. Thanks. Go for it.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Fred Moskowitz. My area of focus is on mortgage note investing, where instead of investing and owning the real estate, we invest in the debt and become the lender, become the lien holder, and talk about how this can be a great strategy for someone that's interested in investing in real estate, but maybe you don't have the time or don't want to have the headaches of owning rentals and managing properties and dealing with repairs. So this can be a great strategy. And this is why banks and large lending institutions prefer to be a lien holder instead of a property owner.
Right. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thanks, guys, for being here today. Let's dive into the news from the New York Post. Phony NYC broker showed apartments he didn't own in a $25,000 scam. So just a little recap. So it was a guy that was posing as an agent and he didn't even own any of them, so he was using Facebook Marketplace, and just scamming people out of their deposits. It's a pretty common scam. Have you guys heard of this? Run into that yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the Philadelphia market, and in my local rental market, this has been going on for years. And unfortunately, it's very easy for someone to go online, copy from a valid rental listing, copy all the photos, and then go and post their own fake ad, right? And unfortunately, it happens quite a bit, and people will put up a deposit and get scammed, unfortunately.
Yeah. I go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to ask, would you guys put a deposit down on an apartment you don't see?
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy didn't have keys, did he?
No.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've lived in two places, once in San Francisco and then Los Angeles, and actually now in Honolulu. Both are cities people come from around the world, and it's highly competitive in all of those three locations. You typically have just a matter of hours sometimes when an apartment makes available to put in your offers, and a lot of people do just swoop in and capture something within an hour. And unfortunately, the digital era here just makes that super easy for fraudsters to dive in. It's very, very common. In fact, when I was in LA, I saw ads for when I was renting in LA many years back. I saw ads that were clearly fraudulent, and they were the first to respond and get you on the phone. It was pretty wild.
Yeah.
It's a terrible thing, isn't it?
I've got a huge rent to own group on Facebook, 20,000 people in there. And I'm not the admin on it. I'm trying to get access to becoming the admin for the main reason of kicking all these people out, because it's flooded every day, all these postings. And it's obvious. Like, I'm in the Denver market. Our studio apartments are like $1,400, say, a month. And they're posting stuff for $600. It's like, obviously they don't know this market. That's not a realistic price. So it's obvious to me, but some people might be taken and just think, oh, it's a super good deal. But
there truly is no way to verify in many markets the landlord, right? Like, a lot of times the landlords are doing credit checks and verifying the tenants, but we don't have that same protections in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was just going to say, I bought a truck like that on Facebook Marketplace for like half value once. I'm sure he's delivering it next week. I mean, really, the bottom line is, I think one of the questions you asked us was, where's responsibility lie with this? And, like P.T. Barnum said, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be a way, I think, for the advertising entities to start to tighten this up.
Yeah.
Maybe the guy gets it through once, but then we can identify that. Facebook Marketplace takes it off, and at least that's one less phone number and website. But there's always going to be people trying to game the system.
Yeah, I think that the key lesson here is, before you put a deposit down or before money exchanges hands, it's on you as the person entering into the transaction to make sure that this is legitimate, and certainly don't rent a place sight unseen without having an understanding about, can you get your money back if something is not as it was represented. But if you're renting a place and you're not able to go see it, send someone, hire someone to go there and check it out. Call a friend that lives local to the property. There's certainly ways to do it. And if the broker or the person representing the rental is not willing to cooperate for you to have the visibility to see the place, that's a red flag right there. And certainly you should be alert. So I think a big part of this is just awareness as a consumer or as a potential renter to make sure you do your homework, do your due diligence, and check things out. Because, there's a lot of scams out there all over in every kind of business.
Yeah. I got an idea. So I've been getting, as a realtor, I get these people reaching out. Oftentimes they're land deals and they're looking for somebody to help them. And to clarify that they're a real person, I will have them take a picture, like a selfie, holding up their license, so I can at least, real time. They don't have time to go finagle anything. I got a picture of them with their license, so at least I know they're a real person. That says,
I think I love that idea because it prevents that. If it's done in real time, then it prevents that easily, because that could be, they're deep fakes. They're pretty wild these days. Yeah. But if you ask them to do things in real time, in interviews, I'll have to do the same, because I'll be trying to interview somebody overseas, and we have a lot of overseas help in our company. But right then, I'll have them share the computer and run a speed test at that very moment. I'll have them open up a document, share their screen, and then do a writing test, because you have to be very impromptu and immediate, so that you're right, nothing can be contrived.
Yeah. I kind of came up with that idea of the holding up the ID from, I use a showing system called InstaShow for showing houses, and it was developed for rentals, but I use it for my listings too. But the app actually has people scan their ID and take a selfie, and it's all geolocated too, so you know that they're in front of the property. Pretty cool system for verifying, and it does instant background checks too, so they're logged in. So if they could have a felony or something, like, you're not getting in my place, right? So yeah, it's good that there's some tech out there trying to overcome these issues. So, well, let's jump to the next article. We've got like 3 fraud ones in a row here, so hang in there.
Yeah,
need to spread these out a little bit.
I'm depressed already.
Yeah. Okay, from ABC 13 Houston. Husband and wife arrested 8 months after ABC 13 report on deed fraud. They're a Texas couple that were forging deeds and stealing control of more than 30 properties worth over $1.6 million. So what do you guys think property owners can do to catch these kinds of things?
I've been waiting to say this since you invited me on. Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. I think there's something about the blockchain really makes sense, because if property ownership had some transparent style ownership like the blockchain, you simply wouldn't be able to do something like this. And unfortunately, today, you can move $1 million asset ownership is very fragile, right? You can move $1 million address with some forged signatures and some forged notary. That's all it takes.
Yeah, and what that illustrated to me was the problem. Actually, the blockchain solution, that's very intriguing. But the register of deeds in each county and state are going to rely on the notarized signatures. That's where the fraud is happening. If the notary is not willing to sign it because they're not looking at IDs, then it can't be registered. So I think we got to go all the way back to that. And now we're about to get political and start talking about IDs. How can people sign and get a document notarized without some sort of a state or national ID?
Good point.
Yeah, something I've noticed is that certain certain counties will send a letter to the property owner anytime there's been a deed conveyance or a new encumbrance recorded against the property, they will immediately send a letter to the owner of record to confirm that, hey, a new mortgage or a new encumbrance has been recorded against this property. And if you feel this is suspected fraud, please contact us, because a lot of times the property owner just doesn't even know. Because, hey, if you own a property, are you going to go down to the county courthouse every week and see if anything new got recorded as a lien against your property? No. You're supposed to be notified. However, I really like seeing this proactive processes that some counties have put in place. I think that really benefits property owners, and that's certainly something I'd like to see more of.
Hey, Fred, as a note holder, if you're in first position and that property is sold, how can that be sold without satisfaction or triggering a due on sale?
It can be sold subject to existing liens and encumbrances. And if you've ever looked at a HUD-1 document, there's actually a place for it on that federal form to list liens and mortgages subject to in this case. So it is possible to do it, and the lien holder may or may not get notified.
Right.
That's where the issue is.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're talking about right there.
Yeah.
And I think, and Dave's point was, did it trigger a due on sale clause? And it may, depending upon the documents of the loan, right? It may not, but they would have no idea of knowing. I think what the problem in our country is, we have sort of an archaic kind of concept of ownership, right? And unfortunately, what it comes down to is we just rely on these signatures and notarized documents and archives as a more historic record, more than an active self-checking security system for assets. And it's just going to become worse, because now I can call up a notary in a matter of 5 or 10 minutes, just virtually being in Hawaii. And I was just a couple of days ago, we need to get a document notarized. I sent it to a colleague. We were there virtually within 5 minutes, notary right there. 10 minutes later, we were done, had the notarized document. We just scanned in the ID. We never had to show it. We scanned it in with our phone, and that's all they used. I mean, that is so easy to fake. It's only going to get worse unless we figure out mechanisms like what Fred's suggesting here. Or, I mean, the IRS does a good job, right? When my accountant goes in and gets access to my records, I get letters. Anything that happens, my address changes, I get letters. We got to figure out a way to carry some of those active security measures over into housing ownership, asset ownership.
Yeah. Let's go to our next article from Mortgage Professional America. Fraudsters hijack closings. $19 million scam exposes mortgage industry's cyber weakness. Kind of along the same lines, and maybe the same answer. So we're talking more about wire fraud. So that's been happening a bunch.
Yeah, that's been going on for many years, right? We hear of cases where hackers will intercept email which includes wiring instructions for a real estate closing, and swap out the wiring instructions to go somewhere else and then send it on to the intended recipient. So one practice that we have implemented in our business is we don't send wiring instructions at all by email. If there's a document with wiring instructions, we'll leave them blank. And what will that do? Oh, the recipient's going to get it, and we'll call them. We'll do it over a live telephone call to a number that we know is valid, not one that was just given.
Right, not the one in the email.
Verify in real time.
Yep.
Verify verbally the wire instructions. Make sure you're talking to the person that you're supposed to be speaking with. And these are just such easy steps that anyone can take. And certainly before you send any wire anywhere, you want to double check and triple check all of that information and make sure that the money you send is going to arrive at the place you intended it to. Because if anything goes wrong within minutes, it's too late.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, we have all this amazing tech that it's a double-edged sword. Like, it can make it better or worse, right? Makes it easier to steal money. We might have some safeguards that make it easier to stop this, but we're back to freaking making a phone call.
Yeah, and I mean, when a bank sends me an email, it goes through an encrypted service. And I think real estate is one of the few industries that don't require transactions involving major financial private information be encrypted or have authentication. And how is that? Why it just doesn't make any sense why you could be sending, and we don't send, because I'll give you an example. 3 or 4 years ago, one of the partners in a deal we were in notified us that they had taken his cousin's email address and apparently had hacked into it, and she was helping with investor relations, hacked into it, and they were sitting on it, and when they were reading the emails, they were sniping out false wire instructions, just waiting for the right time, and they were sending it and deleting it from the sent, right? And so they were just quietly sending out one wrong, and it's just, for how long? And so as far as I know, no money was actually lost during this, but it would put the fear of God in us. And just like Fred, we never sent another, even K1s, right? We never sent anything with private information. We forced people to go through our investor portal, which is this where it holds encrypted and there's dual authentic verification. And all of them say, call us. The unfortunate problem is that they don't. I mean, I'll get maybe 1 out of 10 of them will actually call one of the 3 numbers we provide. We provide 3 different people's numbers on all of our wiring instructions to confirm. Maybe 1 out of 10 will actually make that call.
Yeah, that's a good point, Patrick. It is an inconvenience when you can't just continue and do your thing electronically, and now you got to stop and make a phone call and get a hold of someone. But it's a minor inconvenience. I think it's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Let's go to our next news item from Realtor.com. Government shutdown adds uncertainty to housing market as mortgage rates tick up again. What do you guys think about this, and like how it's affecting buyer confidence?
Oh.
Or whatever other.
I think people rely. Yeah, I mean people just need certainty. They need predictability, right? And when things are uncertain, that's when things. Even if we know we're on a path, whether it be a downward trajectory, an upward trajectory with interest rates, as long as people have a confidence and they predict where they think the world's going to be, they're going to do business, because you can do business in good markets and you can do business in bad markets. I think it's when things are thrown up and uncertainty in the business is introduced. Like, can you get on a plane and land? I had somebody couldn't join a webinar because they were circling for 2 hours, right? Because when things like that happen and people become less confident, less certain, they'll wait, right? They'll hold off. And with the government shutdown looming for God knows how long, it's going to have some it's going to have some negative sentiment in the market.
Yeah. As a realtor, it's like, oh my God, one more thing that's causing fear. I mean, the interest rates have been killing us, right? It's like the worst market on the selling side, especially since 1995, right? It's just all this inventory, it's getting hard. And then this comes along like, another kick in the tail. So.
Unfortunately, it ends up being perceptual more than real.
Yeah.
And we talk about that with fear.
Yeah.
What kinds of fears are real? Is the world going to end because the government shuts down? No. We're 24 days into it now, but the perception, and then that perception is fueled and stoked by every social media hero out there. And then the next thing you know, nobody knows what to do. What a great opportunity for real estate investors who understand that.
There you go.
So you look at that side of it and say, government shutdown could be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah. Buy now.
You understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, this reminds me of what it was like during the previous election cycle. Probably the last 6 months of 2024, where all people stopped doing things because there were uncertainty of the election and what was going to happen. People didn't move forward with purchasing properties or making large business moves because of that uncertainty. Even though the outcome of the election was likely not going to have a direct impact on this transaction, it still created enough uncertainty where people would just not move forward. And we saw a lot of that as well.
Yeah. I know for me, I was like, please let this election get over so that we can move on. And then it's been chaos ever since. I think it's been worse. People are like, oh, now what's going to happen? So, oh my goodness. Yeah.
I agree that it's mostly an emotional sentiment. I except for the election time frame. I think when that happened, real estate operators that waited and punted until after January 20th, I think it was, they took advantage of extraordinary tax advantages with bonus depreciation coming back up that if they had closed a day earlier, they didn't. So in the case of the president transition and the election, I think that one was real. This one is still the same administration before or after. I think that in this one, it's just purely more, it's randomness or it's uncertainty, and it's mostly emotional. But it also, the world looks to us, right, to be the guys that have their act put together and the vision of democracy. And we have two parties battling it out and not meeting in the middle. It doesn't show well.
I'm not sure. It may have been a while since the rest of the world looked at us as being the leader in sanity. I don't know.
Been a while, right? We've been on that downward trajectory for a long time, Dave.
Any other comments on that before we take a break to hear about one of our sponsors? All good? All right.
Are you worried about where your money is headed in today's unpredictable market? At Accelerated Capital, their investors tell them that safety and security are their highest priorities. They want to wake up every day knowing their hard-earned money is working hard for them. In the best interest of their investors, Accelerated Capital carefully vets every opportunity, knowing that most of their investors want to avoid risky strategies and stick with more boring but proven asset classes and strategies. Accelerated Capital's team of seasoned real estate experts and financial strategists value long-term relationships and transparency. They're also there to help investors find a fit for their own personal goals. Accelerated Capital has options for both accredited and non-accredited investors at any stage of their investing journey. Visit AccelerateMyCapital.com to download a free copy of The Astute Investor and join their Legacy Wealth Collective private investor club. Or click Schedule a Call to book a short Capital Accelerator call today. To get started, visit Accelerated Capital at AccelerateMyCapital.com. That's AccelerateMyCapital.com. Accelerated Capital. Accelerate your wealth with alternative investments.
All right. Accelerate my capital. Let's get back to the news from Mint. American billionaire disowns son for swindling $2 million in ultimate man cave scam. So Donald Bren, who's this billionaire, disowned his son publicly after these allegations that his son scammed all these people for a luxury man cave club called the Bunker. Wow.
You guys ever seen any of those? They're awesome. It's like a condo for a car. But it sounds like this one came with in-suite dining and all kinds of stuff. I was wondering, why weren't people driving their Bugattis over to look at it if it was a total fabrication? It's like, how could investors have not seen that coming?
Yeah.
Well, how did they not see
model.
Madoff coming, right? It was all about the name. And when due diligence stops at a name, it's a right for fraud.
Yeah. But what about the dad? That was an interesting response, which just makes me wonder if the acorn doesn't fall far from the tree and there's more embarrassment there. But honestly, this is my plug for fatherhood today. You can be disappointed in what your children do, but then you stand by them and you help them make it right. You don't disown them. That one kind of caught me here.
Yeah. It's an interesting conundrum.
So he disowned him, or he just removed him from his will? I wasn't quite sure the details there. I thought it was just saying, look, I'm not going to be paying your bills anymore.
Well, towards the end, it said, I have nothing to do. He was telling, and I think it was a legal maneuver, probably. His attorney said, you've got to get this guy away from you. Yeah. So he had nothing to do, business or personally, with him again, ever.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a tough one.
That is a tough one. Can't imagine what that kind of circumstance does to the relationship between a son and their father.
Yeah.
It's hard to wrap your mind around that.
Yeah. Let's go to our next article from CNBC. Investors are making up the highest share of homeowners in 5 years. Roughly 1 in 3 single-family purchases, it says. And there's, like we've talked, like this is the time to be buying. As investors, we have our heads wrapped around real estate more than just a first-time home buyer. And if they're all pulling back, it's like, well, there's all this inventory. Let's jump in, right?
Yeah.
Part of the data, I think, is going to show that a lot of that net gain in the small investor is coming from a net sell position from the equity funds. So there's a little bit of that balance happening. I don't know if that's good or bad or neutral or whatever, but Main Street is starting to take over more and more of real estate investing. And when I think back on all of these past positive, lovely little fraud articles we've had, how much of that starts to go away when everything is at your fingertips? The real estate you touch, your transactions, everything comes more and more closer to home, rather than being so distant and tech and internet related. So I think we're in a changing paradigm where things are going to go back to boots on the ground and in person for a lot of this stuff. I think that's personally a good thing.
I think there's really 3 aspects to this that kind of comes to mind, because one is just becoming a renter nation. I think that I went through the subprime mortgage collapse myself, and I lost everything. But a lot of kids that are now adults now, either their parents went through it and they saw that happen. They don't value ownership. They value the freedom of rentership. And it's interesting when you look at the data kind of behind this article. I think Dave might have been pointing at it. It's becoming more Main Street ownership. Actually, it's mostly 10 units landlords that are dominating more so than institutions. That's fascinating. It's becoming more mainstream for investors to become landlords. I personally couldn't do it on the single family stuff. I probably took over my life, and that's why I tried to do larger 80+ unit apartments. But then you see developers shifting away from building to own. And there's right now a whole lot more of build to rent, which is incredible because you can build much more efficient and you could build for a rental audience as opposed to an ownership audience. And it turns out to be a lot more cost effective to build and more efficiently to manage. If you can huddle together instead of a large apartment building, a horizontal grouping of single family properties, you can kind of get some of the best of both worlds there. And 3-bedroom, 2-bath being the longest appreciating asset, you can get a bunch of those grouped together. So you see a lot of major shifts taking over the market. It's unfortunate, I believe, because I think home ownership is where Americans keep the majority of their wealth. And that had provided security to a lot of, including my grandparents, right? That had provided security in retirement. But that's something that's not going to happen here for our generation.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the greatest single tax benefit given in the tax code is to buy a house and live in it. And once you've lived in it for 2 years, out of the previous 5, when you sell it, if you're married, $500,000 of profit is tax-free. Tax-free. And all you got to do is live in the house for 2 years. That is an amazing thing that people are overlooking, like you said, Patrick. And unfortunately, you guys were all seeing the ads all over the place from the larger equity funds and the big gurus who own what? Build to rent real estate. Yep. Saying, oh, it's foolish to own a home. Don't own a home. Come rent from me. And I'm sorry. Can't get behind that.
Yep. Anything else on that one?
Right. I'd like to say that I think that this creates opportunity for what may be the minority of younger folks out there that want to open up some possibilities, and now they can go out and buy a home, and there's less competition out there, and look for new opportunities, become an expert in the local market where previously you might have had institutional level investors controlling a lot of real estate, and you're right there in that local market where you live and and you can uncover opportunities there, or purchase a property in an area that is in the path of progress, right? And position yourself with an appreciating asset over time. And like Dave said, live there for 2 years too while that happens, so that you get the tax-free benefit from primary residence. That's fabulous. And so these strategies are available to everyone, and only those that put in the incentive and the work to learn about them and take action, they'll be the ones that benefit the most.
And you just think, but you have to choose to do that.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right, Fred.
It's a self accountability aspect of it.
And that speaks to exactly what Patrick said, which was we're seeing a change of real estate investing as a business to real estate investing as a tool to build wealth. That security from buying your own house and living in it, buying a rental or two, and having those take care of you in retirement.
Yeah.
That's what provided security. And that's what Main Street's going to do, I think.
Dave, I'm surprised you didn't say, when you were saying the most valuable tax strategy, you went for the homeowners exemption and you didn't go for the landlord's 1031.
I know.
So good on you for...
I know. I'm an honest guy. The 1031 exchange is the second best.
David's the 1031 guy, right? So I assumed that he was going to go the opposite direction, but good on you. And I guess this may be the second best tax advantaged tool still available to Americans is the 1031.
There you go.
It becomes so attractive to become a landlord and trade forward without paying taxes that that trumps a lot of other investments. And so if the government wants to lessen the blow, maybe they got to change why it's so, make it not so tax advantaged. When we were living in Newport Beach, it was just it was maybe people that were there like once a year, twice a year, and the community was mostly empty. There was just a few maybe seasonal renters that they had there. It's completely transforming some neighborhoods, unfortunately.
I'm kind of curious where the institutional money is going, besides obviously build to rent. Like I know Home Partners of America, I'm in the rent to own space. So Home Partners of America was a big player there. They pulled out of the market at the beginning of the year, along with Divvy, which was another big player that was a big fund. And they've just fire saled a bunch of their single family homes. So I'm wondering where that money's going besides build to rent.
Part of it's the beginning of the next wave of commercial. There's a lot of anticipation they're preparing as that's turned from its bottom and now starting to creep back up. So a lot of it's that as well, moving from the residential to commercial sector.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talking about an article in Phoenix. They're converting some commercial space into co-living, which is renting by the room, sharing kitchens and baths like that. So I don't know who's behind that. We'll dive into that article a little bit. Might have to do some research, but it's also kind of a not build to rent, but convert to rent model that's providing affordable housing. So yeah, interesting. Well, let's go to our next article from Nantucket Current. Island real estate broker warns about economic impact of short-term rental proposal. So he's warning that the new restrictions, which were anybody's paying attention, short-term rentals are getting more and more restricted. And he's saying it's going to hurt the island's economy and drive up prices, while others are saying it's about protecting community life. So it's this age-old short-term rental balance we're trying to find, right? So
Patrick's at ground zero for short-term rentals. What's been your real experience?
I've been, so living in San Francisco was one of the hallmarks of that, right? And it was, with all the high tech, the bus stops that they created for the Googles and the Facebooks and all the high tech right in the middle of San Francisco. I was living in Lower Haight, right in the middle of the city. And they started consuming all the rentals and short-term rentals. And there was just this constant, or midterm rentals, call it, this constant battle, essentially, of the raping of the San Francisco culture that priced everybody that was living in the Haight. It priced everybody in NOPA, everybody in the desirable places to live, Hayes Valley, that priced them out. And so they ended up having to go out of the city. They were the people that brought the culture to the city, right? And so it was very unfortunate, and I think I mentioned here in Honolulu, you can't do anything less than 30 days because it priced all the locals out of some of the beaches here that are some of the better beaches on the island, unfortunately. And I think I mentioned earlier, there was a short period of time when we were living on the Strand and on the peninsula in Newport Beach until my wife got pregnant. But when we were living there, it was almost entirely Airbnbs. It was almost entirely renters. And we went there knowing it's a safe place with great schools. It's a good place to live with the family. And when we moved there, turns out that's not the case. Sure, they're owned by, people that are well off and educated, but they're renting to these people that come in and just terrorize the homes, terrorize the beaches, and terrorize the neighborhoods in one of the most beautiful places. And we only really had 2 or 3 neighbors within like several homes around us that were there maybe more than half the year. And it quite honestly destroyed that feeling of a neighborhood and that safety that you have. And we decided to move out before our baby got born. We moved to Irvine at that point.
Was your experience really that there was a lot of destructive behavior?
Oh, well, so they were up super late at night, frat boys, frat parties, renting out these beachfront homes. And it's not the place that you want to raise a kid. I mean, if you want to hear the full story. So, man, I don't watch TV, but there was some show like Real Housewives, right, of Orange County or Housewives, something like that. Or, and then that lady like lived like catty corner to us. Her boyfriend shows up with a gun, holds her captive in the house, right in the middle of the Newport Beach. So there was like weird, we had like a helicopter hovering right above us, right? There was really weird things about it, whereas you didn't have just a beautiful, quiet community. You kind of had most of the houses empty, a couple houses here or there. And then when they were filled, it was just like the holidays were just constant parties all night. It just, definitely not a place where you want to live. And if this island's anything like what the peninsula was, it's not a place you want to raise a family. And I would be fighting it if I wanted to stay there.
That's super interesting hearing that side of it, for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of an outlier, which is why I asked, because I've often wondered if my experience is somehow weird and strange. But we've both owned fleets of vacation rentals, and we live on the beach in St. Petersburg, right in the middle of short-term rental and hotel heaven. And I've honestly never experienced, ever, any of these massive, crazy things like you've described. So either I'm just really, really lucky, or I sleep well at night. I don't know. Because to me, it feels like it's a lot more, again, perceptual rather than reality. Those kinds of things can happen anywhere. Do they happen more frequent? Maybe. But ultimately, it comes down to the legal term, quiet enjoyment. And we see that in leases all the time. And that's a land doctrine. When I own or I have the use of a piece of real estate, I am allowed to quietly enjoy it, to enjoy it for my benefit. Well, so if the person next door is abusing that because they're an Airbnb with the frat boys, that's wrong because that's violating my rights. But to take away their rights to rent it seems awfully wrong the other direction as well. And I'm kind of sitting there wondering, the places where we've owned vacation rentals, they've had regulations. Those rules have been enforced. Safety has been a concern. And you've got some sort of police or authority who's there to shape up the bad actors and maybe even take away licenses. But that seems like that's a much more even-handed interim step rather than just saying you can't use your real estate for what you want.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. And in the article, it specifically details that in this case in Nantucket, making the case that there are already guardrails to help with dealing with noise and nuisance, visitors, all those things that's already in place. And to me, it feels heavy-handed to have government step in and restrict your property rights, saying whether you can rent it or not, and so there needs to be some harmony between the two, because certainly letting everything be the Wild West is not going to benefit the community, right? So working with the existing regulations and rules that are there and having the ability to enforce them and make the community a hospitable place so that it encourages visitors, it encourages tourism and commerce. Because let's face it, Nantucket, that is a place that relies heavily on tourism economy, right? All the people that live there, they're tied to it in some way, most likely. or they work in hospitality and tourism and rely on that commerce. And so it's certainly a part of the overall equation. But in summary, I really don't like seeing heavy-handed efforts to restrict property rights.
I agree with Dave and Fred on this. I also was leaning more towards when they're abusing it, right? When that's out of hand. When and you mentioned a comment, taking away licenses for Airbnb. That's an interesting concept. But I think that all of that's important, right? I think it's important to be able to have the ability. I think maybe in some cases, especially the state of Newport Beach, when so much of the economy, so many of the houses are Airbnb, because you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a couple months, over a couple holidays. There's just simply no way they could possibly cover so many different homes and monitor it. I think that there's so many illegal fireworks going off everywhere throughout the whole week. There's no way that you can have enough force to cover that. I know they're starting to use drones, actually, and they're starting to, after the fact, go through drone footage, which is a very interesting thing too now. So, but as long as there can be a balance and a safe place, safe and quiet enjoyment, I think, because you can regulate it. But if it can get out of hand, I think that's when things need to change.
Yeah. You know who really benefits from the short-term rental regulations the most? Think about this. It's the hotels.
Yep. Absolutely. Because it restricts their competition.
Oh, yeah. There's some money behind that.
So there are historic areas of cities where they say, hey, look, you can't modify the buildings. You need to, you can't turn these into commercial. You need to keep these residential because they want to keep them historic. Right. And then there's like this, there's nothing from there, right, beyond that, where it's like, hey, let's keep the art center of San Francisco, the art district. Let's keep Hayes, the hate district. There's no protections to keep the microcultures, which make cities magical, beyond that, right? And so you can just buy a place, majority are Chinese, and then rent them out. And they're not caring about the culture. So it is a really tough situation, or else you do lose the magic of some of the most beautiful places in the world.
Well said.
I had a thought. So for Patrick and Dave, your experiences were different. Patrick, were those like single family homes where you could bring in like, multiple people, versus like Dave, were those like beachfront condos, 1-2 bedroom where you couldn't have a big party, and so you're not having the issues with the noise and craziness? Is that they're not over 2 stories, or there's a roof deck if there's a 3rd story, and they're mostly townhomes or single families along the peninsula. So, but you can fit 20 people in those things, even if there's 3 rooms, just because there's, college kids will come and that's part of their destination. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is some passive control that happens with the size of the property and the amenities with the property. Ours, we're surrounded by single family homes here on the beach, but still the short-term rentals are happening everywhere. But maybe it's because we're not in an area of mega mansions where it really would be hard to fit 20 or 30 people in most of these houses. Although I guess they could try. It might just be the change in mentality over time as well. One of my favorite renters of all time left a $20 bill under a broken wine glass when she left because she felt so bad for breaking the wine glass. I don't think landlords get that kind of treatment anymore these days.
Interesting. Well, let's keep on moving. From Fox 13 Memphis, women accuse real estate investor of taking their money. Xavier McNeil. I guess one gal paid $1,800 for a home that never materialized, and I guess he kept $38,000 from another gal. So he's facing theft charges. He's in big trouble now. So
good.
Yeah.
But again, where's the personal responsibility?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm talking a good game. Would you give me $38,000? It's like Wimpy and Popeye. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a cheeseburger today.
That's an old reference.
I know. Boy, nobody will understand that one, will they?
Where did that come from?
Oh, my goodness. I date myself. Yes, we need to protect vulnerable people, but people also need to protect themselves. There just needs to be a level of common sense.
Well
if something
said.
feels too good to be true, what do you think?
Yeah, that couldn't agree more with you, Dave. Absolutely common sense and self-accountability. If you're handing over money to someone for an investment, well, if it's a real estate deal, either there's a private placement memorandum for this, or you're going to be on the deed as an owner in some form, and understanding what that means and how that works. And if you are unsophisticated, hire a professional to guide you and help you, right? Spending $1,000 on an attorney to look over your shoulder on a deal where you put $38,000 into, I think that's money well spent.
Yeah. And this platform, this show is another tool. People can watch this and hear from guys like us that can give them some ideas of things to do. And just this platform overall, we come out with different guides, things to look out for. So it's good advice.
These kinds of stories, because we hear of hundreds of millions of dollar, scams, and this 40K. I'm sure this happens on a daily basis, right? And it's just hard for me to comment on something like this without taking, that as what I said, where's the personal responsibility? Because it's a tough lesson, but you've got to learn those lessons, especially if this is as significant amount of money as it is for you, right? You got to trust but verify. You got to verify.
Exactly.
No, speaking of old references, there you go.
Yeah.
We also have to do something with that guy. If all that happens is he gets 12 months in club fed, where's the deterrence to keep people from preying? But it's a balance. And too often in our society, we go overboard one way and then correct by going overboard the other way. People should not have to be in fear the entire time they're looking at an investment, but they should be doing some due diligence.
Absolutely.
Just like that first story. Where's the key to the house? I don't understand.
Yeah. I mentioned at the beginning, so our acceleratemycapital.com, we've got to download the Astute Investor book. And so it gives people specifically looking into passive investments like real estate syndications, things to think about, like how to do your due diligence. Because like Fred and I were talking before the show, investors that aren't in it as much as we are don't know the questions to ask, and there's fear, right? But they know that they should be investing in real estate, but they don't know what to look out for. So finding resources like that that's important, because otherwise everybody's just stuck in this fear mode and they're not going to do anything, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, as someone that's been involved in the investment world for many years, I talk to people all the time that had a unfortunate situation like something like this, or they got involved into uh, a deal or transaction with people that are not reputable, like something went wrong. And in a lot of the times, I see that if the person would have spent 15 minutes just Googling the person's name or the entity they're working with and see, they could have avoided making some poor decisions. Sometimes it's as easy as that, right? Dave, excellent point about the personal responsibility for sure. And sometimes as easy as a simple internet search that would have taken you 15 minutes would have opened your eyes before getting involved with someone that's a bad actor.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to do that, just get help, hire the help. It's so easy to look up someone and see if they're a frequent flyer down at the county courthouse, wrapped up in all kinds of litigation for the past 5 or 10 years, right? And maybe you have to hire an attorney or hire a paralegal for an hour to do some basic research. But guess what? Court records are public. They're in the public record, all the cases, it's right there. And so this is not information that's hidden in any way. It's available to everyone. You just have to put in the effort and the work to look at it and seek it out. All
that's
part
true.
of diligence.
And that's true. The background checks right now are so digitized that you can do a full countrywide civil search. And I mean, the cheapest ones are like $30. You can, but I think ours are like 175. And then we actually use a private investigator when we look at sponsors and when we look at different companies, and they provide a full assimilation of these social media profiles. They're written. If there's Reddit reviews, they come up with full, like the records of their driving, the records, criminal, civil, all over the country. And then they write a summary of their trustability of the individual. So we use a lot of different things. And that was only $1,500. Quite the last one that I ran on a partnership and their company was only $1,500, and it came back with a lot of really great information. And what I always start out with is, hey, look, part of this process is for me to do a background check. Do you consent to that? And part of the process is, well, are you going to disclose everything that we're going to find in advance? And just figure out if they're trustworthy, right? And then see what happens. But we've seen some weird stuff come back. We've seen criminal bounce checks. We've seen brandishing a weapon, like 3 or 4 felony speed tickets within the last 10 years. Things that show a pattern of reckless behavior that you shouldn't be investing with somebody that has that. So it doesn't take much money, from 35 to 70 or 150, you can still do a national search. But if you're really doing a lot and it really matters to you, do a real one. Have somebody, the professional, a real person, do an assessment. That's our take.
It's a great point, Patrick. I'll tell you what, that $100 or $150 sure is a drop in the bucket compared to $38,000, right?
Yes.
Good point. Good investment. Yeah.
What's ROI on that investment?
I didn't know there was going to be math involved.
So if anybody's interested, the company that does the ones online that we've been using for a long time is Checkr, CHECKR. And that one provides a very, very low cost option on up to our custom version is, I think, $170 some. And then that's what we would do on an initial basis. And then we would actually, if anybody's reach out, I'll tell you who the private investigator is we use that does a full assimilated opinion too. But those things are readily available online. Just a click of a button takes about 2 minutes to get it going.
Cool. So Checkr, like the game of checkers, but without the S?
CHECKR. No
R
E.
with no E at the
.com.
end.
Yeah.
Checker. Okay, I'll check that out. I know the last syndication we did, we had multiple partners, general partners, so we all went through background checks, so we knew what was up with each of us, because it was kind of a new relationship between us. So it's good to know what was up. Well, let's take another break for our next partner.
Are you looking to elevate your business through exceptional content? Universe Media Publishing is your gateway to success. We understand that in the world of business, content is king, but not just any content. Your business deserves content that captivates, convinces, and converts your audience into clients. At Universe Media Publishing, we specialize in crafting SEO-rich web content, persuasive copywriting, and marketing copy that resonates with your audience. We don't just write, we engage, we connect, and we deliver results. Imagine your brand's voice amplified, your message crystal clear, and your presence dominating the digital landscape. That's the power of partnering with Universe Media Publishing. Don't let your business just blend in. Stand out, be heard, and make an impact. Connect with us at Universe Media Publishing, and let's turn your vision into reality. Visit universemediapublishing.com today. Your story, our expertise, together, we'll create magic.
Okay, back to the show. From Housing Wire, suspected $100 million real estate fraud scheme uncovered in Baltimore. More fraud! Oh my goodness.
What is that?
My director of marketing, when he saw the name of this one, fraud, he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this one? Because it just seems depressing. Like, it just seemed rough, like a rough conversation." But I mean, this one hits home because actually we do have a lending company. We have a company that lends, we have a company that buys, and we do litigation finance, other things. But this RCN Capital is one of we do commercial lending, but they do residential lending. But they are one of the players here that were financing phantom rehabs. They were not trust but verifying. They were not looking at the improvements and verifying that the work was getting done. And when you work at a large scale like that, you can't lose sight of the granular due diligence that's necessary. And so, there's one side, there's the fraudster, but then there's these financial institutions that just enable it, right? That allow the fraud to go forward at a massive scale. And I'm sure Fred knows what I'm talking about. When you do improvements and you're doing draws on rehab loans, you should be reviewing pictures of the work before and after and verifying things are getting done and having people visit the properties on some regular audit, right? Verifying the contract, the scope of work, and check to make sure the work's done. And it clearly was not happening.
Yeah.
And it affected all the people that were living there in that neighborhood, right? Foreclosures happening. Oh, they got to move out. Well, and those projects not getting handled, so the quality of
properties sit vacant, exactly, and it's blight. But yeah, clearly this is on the lender, that they weren't monitoring what was going on, and also. When I hear about inflated appraisals, that's something that has to be addressed from the administrative oversight for appraisers. Appraisals, the profession of real estate appraisals is a licensed and regulated practice, and they have to handle it through the mechanisms to have in place. I suspect there's probably multiple bad actors involved in this, and that has to be addressed because lenders want and need to rely on the validity of an appraisal that's done, and so any fraud like that has to get addressed. But clearly, it's on the lender that they were not watching what's going on, right? Like Patrick said, not having a representative go out to inspect properties, take photographs, document the work that was done before releasing a construction draw. Right? This is standard practice in commercial lending to do this.
Yeah, sounds like
There's
they're
negligence.
lazy or being cheap or a combination of those, right? That came back and hurt everybody, right?
Well, and you've also got some vested interest in mortgage brokers. This article just screamed to me 2008.
Mm-hmm.
This was a huge part of that. The ninja loans, no income, no verification, massive origination fees, all encourage these loans to be written. Why did the banks want to write the loans? Because then they could bundle them and create the CDOs, and it all flows downhill. What I'm seeing though, and we'll see if it continues to play out, DSCR loans are really more of a hybrid commercial product because they're not based on the inherent value of the asset. They're based on the income that asset is going to produce. And that's how commercial real estate has always been valued. Residential real estate, there's always been a lot more of that flux. What kind of community is it in? What does it mean? What are the schools? All these intangibles that, Fred, to your point, appraisers were taking into account. And now here we are with lenders saying, we're going to lend on residential real estate as if it was simply commercial real estate. So what are the standards? I don't think there are any.
That's what my question was.
Yeah.
Because like FHA, VA loans, you got guardrails and standards, and DSCR is kind of out in left field with maybe a lack of that. And that's exactly why this happened, right?
Yeah. But I agree with you, Dave. It starts to look more like a commercial loan. Think about, how does commercial lending work? If you have a business, you want to get a commercial loan, then it's going to be based more on the revenue and the financial principles and financial position of the business itself. And it becomes more of a focus on that. And so that has to be understood and looked at and taken into account.
I think the inherent part of the fraud is that they were stacking both sides to their advantage, because they were using the appraisals, right, where they bought properties for like 80K, and then they said now they're worth 200K because look at all this false work that we did. And so they were able to get like they were able to somehow appraise these higher, and then they were able to get, which is how single family homes are valued, right? So took groups of houses and did this. So they said, okay, here's these false comps, right, that appraised higher. And then, so give me a, like you said, commercial or income-based loan on this other property. So they kind of took and then they did comp stacking, which is meaning that they just kept doing this with more and more properties in the neighborhood. They gave the appraisers, here's the comparables that we believe this is, based off of. And then all of a sudden they took these higher appraisals, used those, and then they started extracting money that wasn't there, value that wasn't there out of the properties. So it seems like they're actually doing both. If it was purely a commercial, then they would all be income based, right? But in this particular case, they're comp stacking appraisals to do comparables, but then getting the income based loan off of falsified leases.
2008, my friends.
Do we not learn?
Well, there were some folks in the finance industry that did really well during that time. So did they learn? Yeah, I think they learned pretty well to keep it going.
Good point. Let's go to our next news from United States real estate investor right here in our own house. Vegas lawyer Matthew Beasley sold the dream, then shot his way into infamy. Vegas attorney Matthew Beasley went from luxury cars and $1 million homes to facing a century in prison for running a $500 million Ponzi scheme that ended in an FBI standoff. Woohoo! This guy stuck his neck out and got got it cut off. Looks like.
Wasn't that about the same sentence that Madoff got? But Madoff was like 18 billion.
Yeah, I don't remember exacts. It goes back a little ways. Let's see. Any ideas on that? Thoughts on that?
Wasn't he dealing with accredited investors?
Bernie Madoff?
No.
Oh,
Beasley.
this guy. I didn't dig that far into it.
For some reason, I thought that he was, because it was the typical Ponzi. He was paying returns to new investors or to old investors off of investment from new investors.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a surefire way to have the house of cards fall.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of, I think, the most honest, but probably the worst marketing pitch I've ever seen on websites seeking accredited investors. They said that their investment was only available to accredited investors because you can afford to lose the money. On the website, I went, dang, I want to invest with them. That's honest.
That sounds like an appealing argument. Right?
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Ponzi schemes like this one are tough because my understanding of what he was doing, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but he was collateralizing a position in a settlement of a case. But a lot of those attorneys will say, hey, what I do is attorney-client privilege, it's confidential, and that is not a regulated industry, right? So it's in this particular case, I think he was just fabricating, hey, look, I have all these personal injury claims and do all these settlements and give me some money on a note. And in that case, none of it actually existed. The underlying collateral wasn't there. The difference, I think, being that, I do litigation finance. In fact, I think the legal industry is one of the best industries to invest. I mean, like healthcare, it's just attorneys are really busy in good times. And when people get litigious, they're really busy in bad times. And just like healthcare and education, it's just up and to the right all the time. It's wild if you look back at the data. But you've got to secure your underlying collateral, just like any asset-backed lending strategy, which is what this was, a corporate asset, right? It's necessary to do a third-party review. There are law firm valuation specialists out there. They're expensive. I mean, we paid 25, 30 grand to do that, not, 30 or 50, 300 or 500 that you can get a desktop appraisals for, right? Or roll appraisals, 800. In real estate, it's a lot more expensive, but those are necessary to review. Are the dockets actually there? Do the files actually exist? Are the contracts actually in place? Are these real people? Like, those are all things. What are their driver's licenses real? Like, checking all that stuff is necessary when you're lending on a legal asset. Any kind of corporate asset, you have to have that review, that collateral review. It just becomes a little bit more expensive. People don't tend to do it. And when you don't have that, you don't have here's your representation of your collateral. They could be selling you snake oil. They could be selling you anything. And that's where, and there was no lien in real estate. You can't continue to sell the same collateral or fake collateral because you do a deed, right? Deed of trust. And just like when I do litigation finance, we put a UCC1 on the law firm, and it puts us in a position that's visible so that you can't sell that collateral twice. And then the financing agreement specifically states, the cases that were reviewed that were collateralizing. In this particular case, he was just going direct. There were no liens. There was no way to verify, do a title search, make sure that those assets, whatever they were actually real and already lent on. And when you don't verify, these things can happen. People go south. Whether or not it started out that way or he turned bad is oftentimes how it happens.
So with accredited investors, you've got to have an SEC filing, right? And got to have all your ducks in a row at the beginning. But the SEC, do they, as far as you guys know, have any oversight during all the details going forward? Obviously this was a Ponzi scheme. You'd think that there would be some kind of check-in instead of waiting till something comes up and they're like, oh, yeah, you screwed up. You're losing your SEC license, whatever, and going to jail.
Well, I think in this particular case, he was marketing these as private loans. So I don't think he was registering. Maybe I could be wrong. I think that they would most certainly consider it a securities offering. The SEC would classify it that way.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how it would end up, and I'm pretty sure that's how he's going down.
Yeah.
But I think he was just doing business loans. I don't think he was doing limited partner Reg D 506C or B filings. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, no, but I think they would pop him for that. They would claim it was, or they did claim part of it was going to be that it's an unregistered security that he was marketing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I mean, anytime you're issuing, in this particular case, he says a debt, but they're purely passive. Yeah. So the SEC didn't have visibility over it. That's your answer, James, in this particular case.
Yeah.
But then if you're doing business loans, you need to have a lien. You need to have somebody evaluate the collateral, just like any asset-backed lending strategy. It's literally the exact same steps to do a real estate loan as it is to lend against a legal litigation finance, right? Or a legal settlement. You have
absolutely. The underlying lesson here is it's important to understand how the collateral is backing the investment and how is that secured, because otherwise you're pouring money into an unsecured position, and maybe you're okay with that, but if you are, your upside better be high enough to warrant doing that, because that's a lot less of a safe position than being secured in the title of ownership of the asset, whatever it is, and having an understanding of how that works and what steps would you have to take to recover your capital if there was ever a problem in the future.
And what priority you have to collect, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's jump to our next article, Multi-Housing News, turning vacant office space into co-living units, from a Pew Gensler study. Are you guys familiar with the co-living space?
It's been done at universities for a decade or two now.
Yeah. So people
concept, everybody's got their own bedroom, and they all connect to the group kitchen and living room. What really piqued me about this was the first thing I went, people transition out. Why would they want to do that, or why would that be attractive once you're out and on your own?
Yeah. And
then I all of a sudden realized, wait a minute, we're not necessarily opting out of adolescence when we graduate from college.
That's true.
That's actually kind of it's a familiar way of living for that age group. It's familiar for them to get into as they launch, in particular if it's economically advantageous.
Yeah.
It provides another stepping stone to ultimate home ownership, which Gen Z is claiming they don't have right now.
Yeah.
So it could be really good.
Yeah. So I'm in this space. It's a growing space. We work with Pad Split, which is kind of, think of it like the Airbnb app for co-living. And it is similar to student housing, similar to sober living homes, but it's more for working professionals. And they could be, like you said, Dave, students that are transitioning to the next step, so they're familiar. But I mean, we've got in one of our houses a guy, he's 65 probably, as young as people just out of school. So it's more for the working professionals. So we're not dealing with kids, school age, college age kids.
Right.
They just need affordable housing. So as an example, like I said before, a studio apartment here in Denver's $1,400 a month. But, somebody that works at a restaurant may not make enough to afford that, and a car and their food and entertainment, whatever expenses they've got. But they can get a room for $850, $900. And so it's filling that gap where people are just barely getting by. So it's also creating, some community. The social aspect is huge. A lot of people, when they live in an apartment by themselves, they're lonely. It's getting worse with social media. So this creates something that people, whether they know they need it, know that they need it or not, it creates some connection. And some people crave that. They're like, I don't want to live on my own. I like living in a house with other folks. So anyway, that's my little...
I think there's really the two sides to it. One, there's just the overall efficiencies, right? The urban areas is becoming more and more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's the new middle class trying to stay urban, right? Because it's like in San Francisco, you have to make $200,000 to $300,000 a year just to survive. If you want to try and rent your own place, you can live in a really nice spot with a great kitchen shared, right? And living spaces shared, and have a social community for a whole lot less. Places like Japan, they've been doing this for a lot longer, right? They even have capsule hotels where people can come and literally, when I went to Japan with my whole family, we actually went and stayed at a library capsule hotel where you have this little capsule, and you can rent these things out, and these people that work late, they'll come stay in the capsules, then they'll go off like on the weekends. That's a little bit different concept, but it provides for all the facilities to be able to work and or live in the urban areas. I think it's the new way for people to get married later, have kids later, and enjoy that middle ground, that after college and before they settle down with somebody for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I love what you said about community, James.
Yeah.
I think that's, my wife and I were talking about this the other night. Over 30 plus years of marriage, we've had roommates for 25 of those years. Not because we necessarily had to, but because it created some of the most awesome dynamics in relationships. And college used to be where you would get those. Your college friends were your friends for life. Well, as we move into the gig economy, as college begins to price out for some people, as we start to see people going more directly into careers, where are they going to build that community that Patrick's talking about? And so, again, that's another good thing. You're forced into a social situation, which is hopefully going to end up being really good for you.
Yeah.
I think the other piece about it is the office conversion, right? Because there is millions, 9 million square feet of office space that is unaccounted for. And so what are you going to do with it? You have to do something with it. And you can't, it's not, most of it cannot. I think I heard the statistics were less than 6% of it can actually be converted to multifamily.
Right.
Just because of the way that, well, first the economics of it, and two, the zoning laws, the way that they don't have enough bathrooms, they don't have windows, they don't meet the code, right? So you've got to come up with something new and something creative. And in cities, they turned the old industrial places into flats, right? With completely different alternative ways of living that it required a whole new set of codes to be written to be able to repurpose that space and come up with a new creative way to live. And I think this is just the world adapting to what are we going to do with 9 million square feet of office space, and then finding some people that, okay, this is a really weird spot. It's not good for an apartment. It's not going to compete well. How about we just put a bunch of beds in here, right? And make it, and the people that are looking for something more economical, they're going to make some trade-offs. And by the way, Mr. Government, can we make some changes to the requirements for living for this new asset class, or this new approach? Yeah. I think it's a really creative solution for a big problem. And I've often said that, I mean, the only thing that's excluded from our fund, from our debt fund or acquisitions fund, is office. That's the only asset class we inherently excluded from our docs, because I think it's a falling knife. right? I still don't know how it's going to recover. And I think creative solutions like this, they can get a lot of incentives from the government to be able to convert some of these spaces. And I think it's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. As an example, we compare co-living to short-term rentals. Like, as we talked about before, short-term rentals are being more restricted. Opposite things happening with co-living. In fact, our governor passed a law within about the last year and a half, removing the limitation of how many unrelated people live in a single family home. It's a statewide law because he's trying to solve the affordability and homeless problem we've got growing here in Colorado. So that went away. So Colorado, Washington, and I think Oregon are the first of 3 states to remove that restriction. And all about the same time, Pad Split identified Denver as their next market to come in to, because we got an affordability problem, and it just happened that we changed that law, but that really helped. So traditionally, we've been in the single family home space, which, people like to live in a single family home versus an apartment, most people. But I love the creativity of like this article talking about converting the office space. We've been working with architects too to build more, like 16 bedroom homes that would be in a residential area that would be specifically co-living. So I think there's a lot of creativity and opportunity here. So Fred, do you have a comment?
Well, as I said earlier, I like the idea about seeing restrictions lifted that restrict property rights, what you can do with your property when you own it. If you want to buy a 4-bedroom house, maybe you're in your younger years, you're just getting started in life. You bought your first house, you buy a 4-bedroom house, and you want to have a roommate or two to help so that you're not living alone, so that you can subsidize some of your costs and expenses. Why does that need to be restricted? Right? And so I like the idea about laws like that being lifted, because I would say that in the majority of those cases, if you look at the history and the spirit behind those laws, they were put into a place in a very different time and with very different intentions. I don't want to get political, but that's what I'll say. Just look at the spirit of why the law came about. And most times we'll see that it's no longer relevant in today's times.
Well, hey, let's keep things moving. Getting towards the end here. From CNBC, single family rent growth just hit the lowest level in 15 years, new report finds. You guys, wait, who's in single family rentals or in the rental market? Fred, you're in notes. Dave, you are?
Yeah. We've got some, yeah.
Yeah.
I have an apartment building, not single family. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, we've got a lot of investors that are doing that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're seeing it compress here in Denver for sure, with renewals or new rentals, which has actually, even though, studio apartments, single, one room apartments are more expensive than what we've got, it still put pressure overall on us. So I was thinking about bumping up our rents on our co-living houses, but looking at where things are right now, we're like, nope, we're just gonna keep on keeping on and hopefully not have to drop.
Yeah, the compression is real, especially because if you think about the case of a single family home, right? What's been happening if you've owned a single family home rental for a long time, right? Well, your mortgage payment, your principal and interest, if you didn't refinance, that stayed the same. However, what about the TI? We have PI, TI, but your taxes and insurance, which are your costs, have been going up. Yep. And so a lot of times you'll see that, oh, why is my escrow payment so much more than my principal and interest on the loan? And this is why the costs are going up. And what's that doing? It's squeezing and compressing our cash flow and your net operating incomes. And yes, you can raise rents, but only up to a certain point, because the market won't support an increase at a certain level.
Yep.
So that puts a lot of property owners, especially long-time landlords, are finding that, hey, I'm not making money on this like it was in the past, and they're selling because of that, and it makes a compelling argument there. So, I mean, that's an impact that I'm certainly seeing, and conversations I'm having with investors in my local area.
Yeah.
What's your local area, Fred?
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very regional, right? I mean, it's saying like a 3.3% a year ago and 1.6% now. But in some markets, like Chicago, it's still up. But I mean, they're saying like the net. So you got to kind of look at, but net around the country, man, it's half. It's half of what it was a year ago. And what happened since a year ago? Well, mortgage rates dropped. So people that were waiting and holding off to buy, maybe they're buying. That's part of what maybe that means it's a spike in call it that supply increase, because people have been holding off. Maybe it'll stabilize, because that's a pretty sharp change. And I think things don't typically change that dramatically unless there's some kind of pressure relief happening, because there was all this deferred buying power that waited until the mortgage we started to see the mortgage prices drop a little bit. That may be it. There's been a record high supply of housing, multi and single, because of the starts that were a couple years, 3 years back. But now there's, record low starts through the last couple years, which means that we're going to see, right now we're seeing a bunch of inventory hit the market. But next year and the year after that, we're going to see some of the lowest relative inventory hit the market. So I think that also hits the supply. And then I guess affordability challenges are that, interest rates go up, companies are not doing so well. Maybe the landlords are not charging as much rent just because of that. But I actually think it's some of these bigger macroeconomic things at play that will level off a bit.
The net numbers don't matter to most investors. They're not important. What's important is what's happening in my backyard.
Yep.
And if my backyard's growing, I'm happy. But why is it growing? It's growing probably because we're seeing jobs increase in my region, because we're seeing, at least on a local level, interest rates stabilizing, starting to come down. And so buying's happening. That's the beauty of the new economy in real estate investing. You can go anywhere you want, and you can find those places where, if you like the environment, you want to get some nice growth in rent, you go to Chicago. If the environment in Chicago is concerning you, you settle for less. And it's pick and choose and go find where you want to be. But there's always ways to make money, and you're always going to be able to buy to invest.
Good point.
Love that.
So Chicago 4.7% up, Los Angeles 2.8, Philadelphia 2.7, Washington 2.6, Atlanta 1.9, Dallas down 0.5%. So I mean, to your point, some are up, some are down.
Did it list Denver in there?
No, I don't see Denver.
I'll tell you what, property taxes and insurance costs in Philadelphia definitely went up more than 2.8%.
Yeah.
That's for
Well,
sure.
I mean, insurance is, I mean, in some of the more favorable markets, traditional favorable markets, the southeastern states in Texas, that some of it used to be 4 or 5% insurance growth escalator, which is your biggest expense after taxes, right? That used to be very conservative. 20-30% a year we've seen over the last couple of years, if it's even available. It's doubled and tripled in some markets because insurance carriers have left due to the increase in the losses that they've had from some of the natural disasters. We didn't see that in the Midwest. We actually saw some insurance prices go down, but that just exemplifies how markets dependent it is. And, you know, to Fred's point, what's been obliterating some of the apartment deals is the interest rates rising on the backs of insurance prices skyrocketing with inflating other expenses, payroll, right? Renovation costs, all those things. So that none of that was the rent price changes. None of that had to do with the rent growing or falling, right? Those had a dramatically bigger effect on the health of the asset.
There's actually, and I had some data at my fingertips, but I can't remember now, but there is a growing class of investor that are buying new construction, not intending to rent, so that they can save on a lot of those costs. They're simply holding for appreciation and amortization of the loan as it goes from them, banking on appreciation, because those things that Fred's talking about, and Patrick, the renovation costs. Every time you lose a tenant, what it takes to put it back into service. So, but what it illustrates is that there's so much cash that's still chasing these deals that they've got the option to do that. And I think
they're leaving them vacant? They're just leaving them vacant?
They're leaving them vacant.
Wow.
Just to hold.
That's what my in China, my wife's parents do. She's from Beijing. That's very common in China. People don't want to use things, so they actually leave. They just buy these. They buy these condos. They leave them empty.
Yeah.
Just buy them all in cash. Leave them empty just for appreciation. Mind
What's going
blowing.
to be the trickle down? So the trickle down from that is we're going to hurt the home improvement industry. We're going to reduce stock of available rentals, which then is going to do what? Drive rental prices up. There's just, I mean, my gosh, the unintended consequences of this growing wave by itself could just be tremendous in a huge way, not in a good way necessarily.
Well, James, I'm sorry to say, man, I just looked up Denver, right? And Denco are saying that Denver fell by 3.6% year over year, with the median rent dropping to roughly $1,733. I'm sorry, man. And the vacancy is at like a highest in 15 years. That's really tough.
Yeah. And kind of to that point, you know, we've found that like just regular single family rentals renting to a family, we can't cash flow because the rents just haven't kept up with mortgage rates. And with what's the trend, it's getting worse. Pretty much the only thing that we know of in single family that works is co-living, because you can maximize that space. And it's not easy. It's doable, but we have to, you know, go buy a home that's $500,000-$600,000. That's maybe like when I looked at earlier this week, 5-bedroom, 4.5 bath. We're to make it work and to actually get cash flow, we'd have to add 4 bedrooms or more, you know. We figure 6 bedrooms is kind of our break even, and then to actually get cash flow and a little breathing room is to add, you know, 8 or 9 bedrooms. So yeah, it's a challenge.
Have you considered changing markets? Because I've never invested where I live. From San Francisco to Los Angeles to Orange County, Honolulu are some of the most volatile and worst cap rate, hardest to cash flow, least landlord friendly places on the planet. And so I have always invested where I can the most stability, landlord friendly, diversified employment, recession resilient locations are.
Yeah, it's a good point. It was interesting. We had a co-living conference, first one ever here in Denver earlier this year. And we were talking with people, in Houston, Florida, these other markets where you can buy a home for $250, but like we were talking earlier, the TI, the taxes and insurance in some of those markets are crazy and are typically higher. Our taxes are fairly low compared to like you go to a New York City or something, or state of New York, super high. So despite the fact that we've got to pay more for a house, our overall PITI isn't as high. Like it kind of is more level. So that's what I got to say about that. Should we go to our next fun news item? From Yahoo Finance, Dave Ramsey is fed up with millennials and Gen Z, claims they don't work but want to own homes. This is a hot button issue. Do you guys have millennial or Gen Z kids, or know any that are facing this? I don't.
I do. And I'm a little more sympathetic since I've seen some of the data.
Yeah.
Looking at the real inflation adjusted data.
Yeah.
The cost of home ownership has risen much more than wages over the last 20 years. Most of that occurred during the COVID time. So we're dealing with fallout from that. But the bottom line still is it doesn't change the solution. And the solution is not to whine about it and give up. Yeah. You can either give up or you can work and make it happen. When we were growing up, coming out of college with student debt, yeah, it existed then too. And getting paid starting wages, which wasn't enough. What did we do? We got roommates. That's not a trend that I see very popular. That the very first thing people seem to want to do is they want apartments on their own if possible. And they take roommates only as a last resort rather than as a utility to move them forward. And the answer is you play the game. Get roommates, save money, cut expenses, slowly reduce the roommates, buy a house. Is the dream hard? Yes. But the dream isn't supposed to be given to anybody. The dream is I'm getting really philosophical because I'm watching one of my sons right now where we went together with him to buy a house. He's managing it. He got the roommates. He's 20 years old. He's got that pride of coming through. There's no entitlement. He knows what it takes to make it happen. Now, that being said, though, here's the challenge to all of us, because I see a lot of gray hair and some not so gray hair on this screen. Exactly.
And no hair.
No hair. Yeah. The challenge is for us not to argue, but to assist, to teach, so that people can see and grab that little bit of dopamine that hits when you achieve a goal. Yeah. And to help the young people today get there. Dozen different ways to do it, but I think, do we have a sense of entitlement in certain areas? Absolutely. Should we have a sense of obligation to be teaching the next generation how to do it? Absolutely as well.
I couldn't agree more, Dave. Absolutely. And part of this, back to your point earlier that you've made multiple times, it's about the personal responsibility and what are you going to do about it? Are you going to be a victim, or are you going to say, hey, let me find a creative solution and put it into practice and pull myself up? And absolutely, all of us have a responsibility to share the ideas talk about the concepts, talk about it, and perpetuate the different strategies, the different approaches. What was it like when we were in our 20s coming up? How did we make things happen for us? It's sharing the ideas, because you know what? None of this is taught in school, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So how do you learn? It's by getting around successful people and seeing how did they get to the place that you're trying to get to.
Yeah. Listen to the show.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Go for it, Patrick.
Well, man, Dave Ramsey annoys me a lot because he's not super balanced. He's like I don't know. I'm trying to think of, if we're dating ourselves, maybe the Rush Limbaugh of real estate. Like Howard Stern, just constantly saying things that incite, not necessarily helpful or directive or educational, but incite a conflict. Because his not working hard is really an attempt to say it's about discipline. But on the devil's advocate side, it's also economics. Like, he came from an era when it was, pension plans, right? Where how people survived. And in the 1980s, you could buy a home for like 3x a household income. Now it's like 8 to 10x. In 2025, it's 8 to 10x a household income is what it costs to buy. The affordability has collapsed in this country, right? At a time, and right now we're talking like 6 to 7% mortgage rates, while student debt has skyrocketed. Come on, there is two sides to every flat. To wages are flat, and wages are flat, which haven't kept up. And now they're saying, well, people don't just have a 40-year-old job with a pension, a 40-year running job. They have a gig economy. They have side gigs with multiple streams of income. And that's out of survival because wages have been in flat for decades.
Okay, but I'm not going to let them get away with that totally. Because if you want to go back 10 or 20 years or 30 years, when home affordability was maybe twice what it is now, interest rates were 8, 9, 12, 15%. So a lot of that additional affordability was also offset by interest rates.
Yep.
So I'm not so sure that the landscape isn't still roughly the same, Patrick, but it's the problem, the root problem is maybe just a little bit. 6% interest, I don't know about you guys, it's not kept me from buying houses. It's just not that. Yeah, it's an annoyance because all those 2.8 mortgages I got, I do love those. But 6% compared to the first house I bought at 13.
Yeah. Well, I think you're looking at one data point, but I mean, you look at 8 to 10x for a household income versus 3x. Those are dramatic shifts. Also, with wages being flat, right? They're not getting. They're taking longer to get married. They're taking longer to have kids. That's just social shift. It's not a discipline shift, right? They're not buying earlier, buying younger.
Yeah,
right?
Well, Dave's kind of a curmudgeon, right? He's old enough now. He's allowed.
I'm trying to say, the guys.
Yeah,
I mean, the key would be that he says things which, and I'm on the border, to be honest. I think I wasn't a millennial by like a year, and then if I cite Wikipedia, that probably makes me guilty. But then Wikipedia updated it, and I'm like right on the border of being a millennial. Meanwhile, I was raised in a house in the mountains that didn't have TV. We had bunny ears with fuzzy channel 8 and 11 with like Matlock on it or something, since we're dating ourselves today. But I was right in like the middle ground. So, but I lived through times where I can kind of see both sides, right? Because I actually don't have an identity. I'm kind of split between the two. But I see both sides. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with taking longer to buy a house, right? I think that's okay. I think it's okay for people to wait a little longer before they get married, because if you do, I waited until I was 35 and I married a 26-year-old. Statistically, that means I didn't have my first divorce by then, right? We got to know each other. We spent 5 years dating before we even got married. We traveled the world together. I think there are healthy ways to join in a union that maybe take a little longer to buy a house, right? And you have to now, in order to get your income and your school loans paid down, in order to build up that nest, most people have to wait a little longer. those are all social and economic all at the same time.
Now, that's really well said. And I will give Dave credit on this side of things as well. I think what he's trying to encourage, he'd be the first person to agree with you. Take your time to buy a house. Charlie Munger said the same thing. You should not buy a house until you need one. But in that middle ground, that's when hopefully our voices should be screaming. During that time that you're taking longer, here's what you need to be doing. Paying off student loans, getting out of consumer debt, not buying the new car, saving up the down payment, all of those kinds of things. We can say those in a positive and educational way. We don't have to be the grumpy neighbor on the corner ranting at them, but we need to be saying it.
I'll agree with everything you said except for paying off student loans. The interest rates are like mine, they're super low. That cost of capital is cheaper. But everything else I agree with.
Another thing is fractional ownership. So there's a couple different ways to put your money into, a fund. Basically, there's a bunch of different ones out there these days. So even if you're still renting, you could put some money into a fractional ownership scenario, or you could go in. I think with single family resident loans, you can go up to like 5 different people can go in. Everybody pools their money, for their down payment. Everybody's got to qualify and got to have the right credit scores to make that happen. But you could go in with multiple friends or family, brothers, sisters, whatever, and get a single family home and get started at least, and then start building that cash flow and equity. And then eventually you can maybe buy a house by yourself and get roommates and just kind of use that fractional ownership as a first step. So,
or let's take that act one step further.
Yeah.
Let's take advantage of primary residence financing with 2 or 3 or 4 unrelated people.
Yep.
And go buy a duplex and get lower down payment, get an advantageous interest rate. Everybody lives in one side of the duplex. The other side rents, cash flows the payment.
Yeah.
When that is sold, again, they get that beautiful tax-free hack. And then what can they do? Now you've got your synergy mass to start going and buying your own thing. Small multifamilies up to 4 units. And I know this is totally niche and off subject for everything we've been talking about, but small 4-unit or less multifamilies where you live in one and rent the others, greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yep.
They call it house hacking, right?
Yeah.
Yep. My dad told me to do that right out of college. I didn't do that, but I'm doing okay.
Did he disown you? Did he take away your Bugatti?
No. That's funny.
It's a great way to get started.
Yeah.
Real estate.
Yeah.
Okay, so where does that fit into the most tax efficient benefit? Is it house hacking is number 1, right? And then number 2 is call Dave for his 1031.
There you go. I like that.
Right? But the only thing that, because you can get in with a very low down payment as owner occupied, right? And you can put in some sweat and energy, which helps to appease your grumpy uncle Dave, who's saying you're lazy and not working hard, right? So you're actually creating value while upsetting your girlfriends along the way with but I agree that and I don't know, James, if you're doing it, but some very wealthy realtors in Los Angeles, that is how they're still doing it. In fact, I have some very wealthy realtor friends. They're moving every year to 2 years into a new place, and they're just house hacking at every single one, and they're gonna retire at like 42. Yeah. So it's an incredible way to get started. It's also an incredible way, especially in really expensive markets like California, actually build wealth.
Yeah. I wish, I host a real estate investing meetup, and kids, 18, 19, 20, whatever, just out of high school come to these, and I'm like, I wish I had known about these kind of meetups. Maybe they weren't even around, and understood that concept. I call it nomad investing. So live in one, owner occupied status, low down payment, keep that as a rental, go buy another. And like you said, by the time they're in their mid 30s, 40s, good. I didn't do that. I didn't even know about that. But anybody that's listening,
Dave didn't share the stories with you back then.
Nope.
Mhm.
His dad did. Why weren't you listening to Dad?
Yeah. When I meet these young guys, gals, that I share that strategy with them, and they'll be like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, I just want to shake them. Are you insane? Listen to what I'm telling you. You're going to be able to retire early.
It's very, very lucky to have somebody like that in your life. I mean, my dad had 3 PhDs, so it was very much the academic focus. And I remember numerous times him saying, my home is not an investment, right? His home was a home. And his passion was academics and education, and was incredible, award-winning educator. But I didn't have any kind of guidance in real estate from any of my family, and from any of the extended sides. It was actually like my employer who got me into my first real estate deal. Now, we lost everything, but it was my employer who recommended that I get into real estate, not invest in more high-tech stocks, right? With these startups we were doing automation robotics with. So, man, if somebody's out there and they have one of these guys or somebody like one of these guys on the phone, that is a gift.
Yeah.
That is a gift. Not everybody has.
Your story, that's a classic Rich Dad, Poor Dad story, right?
Yeah.
That's the book.
Sure is.
Yeah.
And even when I got into real estate, I didn't buy for cash flow. I was still the Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Even when I did it, I got real excited and way head over my skis, and I got into a pre-development right before a big collapse. And I learned later the Rich Dad, Poor Dad story and how to buy for cash flow. And that's when I started investing in Houston, not in my backyard in California, but recession resilient, diversified employment, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, buying, renting, rehabbing, refining, that stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome, guys. That covers the news portion of the show. I'd like to thank our sponsors, United States Real Estate Investor Advertising, Accelerated Capital at Accelerate My Capital, Universe Media Publishing at universemediapublishing.com. And of course, thanks to our guests here, Dave Foster, Patrick Grimes, and Fred Moskowitz. Why don't you guys let people know how they can connect with you? Let's start with Dave.
Easy to find, the1031investor.com.
Fantastic. Patrick?
PassiveInvestingMastery.com, all spelled out, PassiveInvestingMastery.com. And I can give away a copy of the book if you'd like.
Great.
Yeah. So I tell my whole story. High-tech automation robotics guy, getting my first deal, losing it all, coming back into single family, losing all my time, and then trading up to larger apartments and energy and other stuff in this book. And a lot of other people do, like Def Leppard lead guitarist is here. There's a Navy SEAL, Tom Ziegler, Dennis Waitley, Brian Tracy. Really fun book. If anybody wants it, it's called Lessons from Thought Leaders. PassiveInvestingMastery.com/book. It was a bestseller, international bestseller. PassiveInvestingMastery.com/book. And we sign them and send them out. If anybody, hopefully, I do it for free. And if hopefully it inspires somebody else along their journey, and they give advice that like I didn't have when I was a young tyke.
Oh, very cool. Have to check that out. Awesome. Fred.
Yeah, thank you. Best way to get in touch with me, connect with me, you can visit my website at fredmoskowitz.com. And if you prefer an easier spelling, you can go to giftfromfred.com. I have a special report on note investing that I'm happy to send out to you by visiting the site. And so I look forward to connecting with you. Always love talking about investing and different strategies and building relationships.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, guys. You've been awesome. Again, I'm your host, James Brown. Feel free to connect with me by going to linktree/partner with James Brown. That's an easy spelling, right, Fred? A little easier.
Yes.
If anybody wants help on their investing journey, book time with me and see how we can work together. You can just go to jamesbrownrealestate.com/coaching. Also, huge thanks to our founder and producer, Antonio Holman with United States Real Estate Investor, and our stand-in producer today, Toby Hansen. Thank you. Follow and subscribe to This Month in Real Estate Investing at thismonthinrealestateinvesting.com or your favorite podcast app. And if you run across any interesting news, events, or have suggestions for expert guests, feel free to share by emailing Antonio at unitedstatesrealestateinvestor.com. And remember, when one door closes, another door opens to financial freedom. See you next month. Take care.